The night was colder than usual. The frozen wind cut across the valley, carrying snow that never seemed to end. Inside his small wooden cabin, the human man sat by the dim fire, his hands wrapped around a metal cup. Steam rose slowly, but it did little to chase away the heavy silence. He thought the night would pass like any other, but fate had a different plan. A sound broke the silence. It was faint, like a weak tap against wood. At first he thought it was just the branches outside. But then the sound came again, louder this time. Someone was knocking on his door. His heart jumped. Visitors never came this deep into the frozen colony outskirts, especially not at night. He stood and walked carefully toward the door. The knocking grew weaker, almost like whoever was outside had no strength left. Slowly, he opened it, and his breath caught. There, in the snow, stood a tiny alien girl. Her skin was pale, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Her clothes were torn and thin, her body trembling from the cold. Snowflakes clung to her hair like frozen crystals. She looked so fragile that the man wondered how she was still alive. Her lips moved, and in a broken whisper she said, "One night is all I ask." The man froze. His instinct told him not to get involved. He knew the stories. Aliens wandering alone in the snow often brought trouble. But something in her voice, so weak, so desperate, pulled at his heart. He could not simply close the door. He stepped aside, his hand motioned for her to come in. She stumbled forward, almost collapsing as she crossed the threshold. He quickly shut the door against the howling wind. The firelight revealed more than he expected. Her arms were scratched, her legs bruised, and frostbite marked her small fingers. She clutched herself tightly, as if afraid the warmth might disappear. He placed a blanket over her shoulders. She flinched at first, but then relaxed. Slowly, her breathing grew steadier. She did not speak again, only sat close to the fire. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning every corner. It was as if she expected someone to burst in at any moment. The man watched her in silence. Questions burned in his mind. Who was she? Where had she come from? Why was she wandering outside alone after so many days in the freezing wasteland? But the girl gave no answers. She only whispered again, "One night, please. Just one night." He nodded, though unease tightened his chest. He could give her shelter for a night, but something told him this was no ordinary visitor. There was weight behind her words, a secret buried in her trembling body. The fire crackled, filling the silence with soft sparks. Outside, the storm raged. The man tried to calm his thoughts, but his eyes kept drifting toward the door. Somehow, he knew this night would not be quiet. He knew letting her in had changed everything. As the wind howled like a beast outside, the tiny alien curled beneath the blanket. Her eyes closed slowly, but even in sleep, her body shivered as if haunted by memories. The man sat awake, listening, waiting. He felt the storm was not the only thing pressing against his cabin walls. Danger was near, though he did not yet understand it. And so the cold night began, not just a night of survival, but the first step into a story neither of them had expected. The tiny alien girl sat close to the flames. Her thin hands reached out as if she wanted to hold the fire itself. The man watched her carefully. He had given her food, a small piece of bread and warm broth, and she ate in silence, not lifting her glowing eyes from the flames. She looked too weak to belong to this harsh world, yet too stubborn to fall. Snow tapped against the windows like endless fingers. Outside, the night howled. Inside, only the crackle of fire broke the silence. The man finally spoke. "What's your name?" She lowered her head. Her voice was quiet, almost too soft to hear. Lyora. It was a name he had never heard before. Alien in sound, delicate, fragile. He repeated it in his mind, wondering what kind of story was tied to it. She did not ask for his name. It felt like she had no strength left to care. After finishing the food, she pulled the blanket tighter. Her eyes flickered to the door again and again, as if the storm outside was not the only thing she feared. The man noticed it and leaned forward. "Are you running from someone?" he asked slowly. She stiffened. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, with trembling lips, she whispered, "They left me, to die." Her words struck him like a knife. The cabin suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. He wanted to ask who they were, but her body language screamed she would not say more. Instead, she hugged her knees close, trying to become invisible. The man sighed. His instincts warned him this was trouble, yet something inside him refused to push her away. He rose and placed another log on the fire. Flames leapt higher, painting the walls with moving shadows. He decided not to question her further, at least not tonight. For a while there was peace. The girl slowly stretched her small hands toward the warmth. Her breathing steadied and color began to return to her cheeks. But just as calm begged. And to settle, a strange sound echoed outside. The man froze. His eyes shifted to the window. It was faint at first, like crunching snow, but then it came again, deliberate footsteps in the storm. He moved quietly, taking his old rifle from the corner. The girl's eyes widened. She whispered in panic, "Don't open it, please, don't." Her sudden fear made his chest tighten. Whoever was outside, it was not just a traveler. He held his breath, listening. The footsteps stopped right at the door. For a moment, there was silence. Then the sound faded, moving away into the storm. The man did not open the door. He stood still for a long time, his weapon ready. The fire hissed as if warning him. Finally, he lowered the rifle. The girl was trembling, her eyes wet with tears. "They're looking for me," she whispered, her voice breaking. The man sat back down slowly. He wanted to demand answers, but one look at her terrified face stopped him. She was just a child, small, fragile, broken, and yet hunted like prey. He forced a calm tone. "You're safe here, at least for tonight." Her lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but instead she nodded weakly. She curled beneath the blanket, shivering not from cold, but from fear that burned deeper. The man stayed awake, watching the fire. His thoughts churned. Who were these people searching for her? Why would they abandon her to die and yet chase her through the storm? None of it made sense. And yet, he had opened his door. He had given her food. He was part of her story now, whether he wanted it or not. As the flames flickered and the night grew darker, one truth became clear. This was no ordinary guest, and this was no ordinary night. The storm outside was only a shadow of the greater storm creeping toward them both. The fire burned low, throwing long shadows across the cabin walls. The man leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving the tiny alien curled beneath the blanket. She looked asleep, but he could tell from the faint twitch of her fingers and the soft tremble of her lips that her mind was far from rest. He stood quietly and walked toward the window. The storm outside was still wild, snow flying in thick waves across the valley. No footsteps remained, no sign of whoever had passed by. Yet his gut told him they would return. Whoever was chasing her would not give up so easily. He turned back to the fire. That was when he noticed the blanket slipping from her shoulder. For the first time, her arm was exposed. His breath caught. Long, jagged scars ran down her skin, the marks of chains, of blades, of cruelty. He had seen wounds before. He was a colonist, a survivor, but never scars carved so deep into someone so small. The man knelt beside her. His voice was gentle. "Lyora," he said softly. She stirred, blinking awake. Her eyes glowed faintly in the firelight, confusion and fear mixing together. She pulled the blanket back up quickly, but not before he had seen everything. "You're hurt," he said. Her lips pressed tight. She shook her head. "It's nothing." "Those are not nothing," he replied firmly. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The only sound was the crackle of fire. Finally, she whispered, "They did this. The ones who left me to die." Her voice cracked as if the memory itself tore at her chest. The man clenched his fists. He felt anger, not at her, but at the faceless monsters who would harm a child. He wanted to ask why. He wanted to know who they were, but he could see in her eyes she was not ready to speak. Instead, he took a clean cloth from his small supplies. He sat near the fire, dipped the cloth in warm water, and reached out. "Let me help." And he said. She hesitated, staring at his hand. Her body was stiff, every muscle ready to pull back, yet slowly, as if fighting an invisible battle, she extended her arm. The man gently cleaned the scars. His touch was careful, steady, respectful. She flinched at first, but when she saw he did not hurt her, she relaxed. Tears filled her glowing eyes. "Why?" she asked in a trembling voice. "Why are you helping me?" He paused, looking at her. "Because no one should suffer alone," he answered simply. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say more, but no words came. She only bowed her head, letting his hands work in silence. He wrapped her arm with cloth, shielding the old wounds from the cold. As the night dragged on, more of her story slipped out in fragments. She whispered of chains, of a lord who saw her kind as tools, not people. She spoke of running, of hiding in caves, of wandering 25 days through frost and storm with nothing but scraps. Each word cut deeper into the man's heart. He realized she had carried not just pain, but an impossible will to live. By the time she finished, the fire had nearly burned down. She looked at him with tired eyes. "You shouldn't keep me here," she whispered. "If they find me, they'll kill you too." The man studied her face, pale and fragile, yet filled with a strength that refused to die. "Then let them come," he said quietly. "This is my cabin. They won't take you from here." Her eyes widened. For the first time there was something new in them, hope. It was faint, fragile as glass, but it was there. The storm raged outside, but within the cabin a bond had begun, a bond built not by words but by wounds shared in silence. The storm did not end when morning came. The sky stayed dark, the snow heavy. It felt as if the world itself wanted to bury the cabin under white silence. The man woke early, his body trained by years of survival. He stirred the fire back to life, its glow pushing away the icy air that tried to creep inside. Leora was still asleep, curled tightly beneath the blanket. Her breathing was soft but uneven, as if her dreams carried more fear than rest. The man watched her for a moment, then turned to the window. His eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. He stepped closer, wiping away the frost on the glass. At first he saw nothing but snowdrifts and falling flakes. But then, just beyond the tree line, he noticed something. A faint indentation, tracks pressed into the snow, not fresh but recent enough to remain. His pulse quickened. He had checked last night after the footsteps faded. There had been no marks then. But now, deep lines stretched across the valley, circling near his cabin. Someone, or something, had come back. He grabbed his coat and slipped outside. The wind cut into him instantly, but he moved with practiced steps, crouching low. The tracks were clear, too clear. Whoever had made them was not trying to hide. They wanted to be seen. The prints were heavy, armored boots. He followed them a short way before stopping. Beyond the rise, more tracks joined the first. 3, 4, maybe more. His jaw tightened. They were hunting in numbers. When he returned to the cabin, Leora was awake, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Her face paled when she saw the snow clinging to his boots. "They're here, aren't they?" she whispered. He did not answer, but the silence was enough. She clutched the blanket around her shoulders, her small frame trembling. "You should have never opened the door," she said in a broken voice. "Now they will never leave you alone." The man set his rice full on the table. His expression was firm. "Then let them come." Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "You don't understand. They won't stop. They will wait outside until the storm clears. They will burn this place down if they must. I am not worth your life." He stepped closer, his voice steady. "You asked for one night, and I gave it. But you are still here, and now you are under my roof. That means you are worth protecting." For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled, the storm howled, but between them, a strange bond grew stronger. Suddenly, a loud crack split the silence. Both of them turned toward the window. A shadow moved quickly across the snow, tall, heavy, armored. Leora gasped, "It's them!" The man grabbed his rifle. He motioned for her to stay back. He moved to the door, opening it just enough to peer outside. The shadow was gone, but the air carried weight. He could feel eyes watching him from the storm. He shut the door and bolted it. His chest tightened. He knew they were close now, testing, waiting. He could almost hear their breaths in the wind. Leora's voice shook. "If they find me, they will chain me again. They will make me disappear, and they will kill you just to silence the risk." The man knelt by her side. His voice was quiet but firm. "Listen to me. I have seen storms. I have seen beasts. I have seen men with no mercy. I am still here, and so are you. If they want to take you, they'll have to take me first." Her eyes widened, glowing brighter in the firelight. For the first time, she believed him. Not because his words promised safety, but because they carried truth. He would stand, even if the whole world froze around them. Outside, the shadows circled, silent predators in the snow. Inside, the cabin held two souls bound by fire, fear, and a choice neither could turn back from. The morning light was pale and weak, hidden behind heavy clouds. Snow still fell, but softer now. The storm was easing, and that made the man uneasy. Storms hid tracks. Storms covered movements. But once the snow cleared, hunters could move faster, and nothing would hide their trail. Lyora sat near the fire, her blanket pulled tightly. Her glowing eyes never left the window. She had not eaten much since the night before. The man could see fear weighing down her small body. She knew the storm's end meant her pursuers would draw closer. He checked his rifle, cleaned the barrel, and set extra rounds on the table. He had lived on the edge of the colony for years. Danger was nothing new to him, but this was different. These were not wild beasts or thieves. These were organized hunters, trained and relentless. Finally, Lyora broke the silence. Her voice was low, trembling. They are not just searching for me because I ran. They are searching because I carry something they cannot lose. The man frowned. What do you mean? She lowered her head, her small hands tightening around the blanket. I escaped with their secret, a piece of knowledge they would kill to protect. His heart pounded. He wanted to demand answers, but her eyes filled with tears before she could speak further. She whispered, I should not have told you. The less you know, the safer you are. Before he could reply, a sharp sound cracked through the valley. Not thunder, not the storm. It was the metallic snap of weapons carried faintly through the cold air. The man moved to the window. His jaw tightened. Shadows were moving again, but this time there were more of them. 4. No, 5 armored figures trudging through the snow. Their suits were dark, their helmets sealed, rifles slung over their shoulders. They moved with precision, spreading out as if surrounding prey. They're here, Lyora whispered. Her voice breaking, the man felt a rush of adrenaline. He grabbed his rifle and turned toward her. Stay low. Don't move unless I tell you. She shook her head quickly, panic filling her eyes. You don't understand. They won't just leave if they can't find me. They'll burn your home. They'll destroy everything until I crawl out. Her words hit him hard. He glanced around the cabin, his entire life built within these walls. Every piece of wood, every nail, every scarred chair carried years of survival. Yet in that moment, he knew none of it mattered compared to the trembling child before him. Through the window, one of the hunters lifted his arm, signaling the others. They were closing in, step by step. The man's grip tightened on the rifle. He turned back to Lyora. Then we won't stay here. If they want you, they'll have to chase us into the wild, and that's a game I know how to play better than them. Her eyes widened in shock. You would run with me? Yes, he said simply. I will not let them take you. For a moment, her small hands covered her mouth, tears forming in her glowing eyes. No one had ever spoken for her. No one had ever chosen her over safety. That one word, yes, burned into her heart. The man began packing quickly, food, tools, fire starters, every piece of survival gear he owned. His movements were sharp, efficient. He had done this before, but never with another life depending on him. Outside, the hunters drew closer. Their boots sank into the snow, their breaths fogging in the cold. The valley seemed smaller with every step they took. The storm that once shielded them was gone. The hunt had truly begun. Lyora rose to her feet, her tiny frame shaking. She whispered, they will never stop. They will chase until one of us is gone. The man looked at her, fire in his eyes. Then let's make sure it isn't us. And with those words, the cabby, and that had sheltered him for years, was no longer a home. It became the starting point of a dangerous flight into the frozen wild, with hunters closing in and shadows growing darker. The man opened the back door of the cabin. Cold air rushed in, biting against his skin. He pulled his coat tighter and motioned for Lyora to follow. She hesitated, her small hands clutching the blanket, but when she heard the crunch of heavy boots outside, she moved quickly to his side. He led her out into the storm's dying winds. The snow crunched under their feet as they slipped into the cover of the trees. The forest was dark, its branches heavy with ice, shadows twisted with every gust. The man moved with purpose, his steps sure, each footfall silent. Lyora stumbled often. Her legs were weak, worn from weeks of wandering, but she did not complain. She followed him, her glowing eyes scanning the woods as though danger would leap from the trees at any moment. Behind them, muffled voices rose. The hunters had reached the cabin. A sudden crash echoed as the door was broken down. Lyora flinched, her breath catching. She looked back, but the man grabbed her hand, pulling her deeper into the woods. "They'll find the cabin empty," he said, his voice low. "That will buy us time, but not much." Branches snapped under his boots as they moved farther from the valley. He knew these woods well, every path, every hidden hollow, every cave that could serve as shelter, but he also knew the hunters had better tools, scanners, trackers, weapons designed for war. As they hurried through the frozen forest, Leora stumbled again. This time she fell to her knees, breathing hard. Her body shook with exhaustion. The man stopped, crouching beside her. His voice was firm but gentle. "Get up. We can't stop now." Her eyes glistened with tears. "I can't. They'll catch us," she whispered. He looked at her, fragile and trembling. Then he lifted her into his arms. Her small frame was light, lighter than he expected. She gasped softly but did not resist. Her head rested against his shoulder. For a moment she let herself feel safe. He carried her deeper into the woods. His breath came heavy, but his pace never slowed. Behind them, faint lights flickered in the distance, search lamps moving between the trees. The hunters were spreading out, searching, closing the gap. The forest grew denser, the trees thicker. He stopped at a rocky ridge, crouched low, and scanned the area. There, hidden behind roots and frozen stones, was a small cave, barely large enough for two. It would have to do. He slipped inside with Leora, placing her gently against the wall. The cave smelled of damp earth, its entrance shielded by hanging branches. From here, they could see faint shadows moving through the forest below. The hunters were close, their voices carried by the cold air. Leora's breathing was uneven. Her glowing eyes watched the lights with terror. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They'll keep searching until they find me." The man loaded his rifle quietly, his face set with determination. "Then we'll make it hard for them." She looked at him, confused. "Why risk everything for me?" He did not answer right away. His gaze stayed on the hunters in the distance. Finally he said, "Because you asked for one night, and now your fight is mine too." Her lips trembled. For the first time since she knocked on his door, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt she was not alone. The hunters' voices grew louder. Their lamps cut through the darkness, searching. The man raised his rifle, his finger resting on the trigger. He knew a storm was coming, not of snow this time, but of fire and steel. Beside him, Leora whispered words he did not understand. Her small hands glowed faintly, the air around her shifting. For a brief second, the shadows inside the cave seemed to bend toward her. The man glanced at her, startled. He realized then that she was more than just a frightened child. She carried power that could change their fate. And in the frozen woods, as the hunters closed in, the man understood something clearly. This was not just about survival anymore. It was about standing against a force far greater than the storm. The cave was silent except for the sound of their breathing. The man kept his rifle steady, eyes locked on the faint lights moving through the forest below. The hunters were close, too close. Their search lamps cut through the trees like blades. Beside him, Leora sat curled against the cold stone wall. Her glowing eyes reflected fear, but also something else. Hesitation. She glanced at him again and again as though she wanted to speak but was afraid of what her words might bring. Finally, her whisper broke the silence. "You should not trust me." The man frowned. His gaze shifted from the hunters to her. "Why?" he asked. Her hands trembled. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "Because I did not tell you everything. Because I cannot. If you knew, you would leave me behind." His jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. "I already saw what they did to you. I already know they want you dead or captured. Nothing you say will make me leave you." Her eyes watered, but she shook her head. "You don't understand. They are not only chasing me for running away. I stole something from them, something powerful. If they find it, they will kill anyone near me, including you." The man's grip on his rifle tightened. He stared at her glowing eyes, searching for lies, but all he saw was fear mixed with guilt. "What did you steal?" he asked quietly. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she lowered her gaze. Her silence was an answer in itself. Whatever she carried, it was too dangerous to name. The air in the cave grew heavy. The man studied her for a long moment, His instincts screamed at him to demand the truth, to know what kind of storm he had stepped into, yet not. Her voice inside him spoke louder, the voice that had guided him when she first knocked on his door. He had seen her scars, her trembling frame, her desperate eyes. That was truth enough. He lowered his rifle slightly. I don't care what you carry. You're here, and I will protect you. Her head snapped up, her glowing eyes widened. Why would you do that when you don't even know me? His voice was firm, steady. Because you asked for one night, and I don't turn my back on someone who asks me for help. Her lips trembled. She pressed her hands against her chest as if holding back a sob. She had expected rejection, betrayal. She had expected to be left alone again, but instead, she found something alien to her. Human loyalty. The sound of cracking branches echoed from outside. The hunters were getting closer. Their voices carried through the woods, harsh and metallic. Leora's body tensed. The man shifted closer to the cave entrance, lifting his rifle again. She whispered quickly, panic in her tone. If they capture me, don't fight, just leave me, please. He turned his head sharply toward her. No, he said. His eyes blazed with defiance. I will not leave you. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Her glowing eyes locked with his, and in that silent exchange, something changed. She realized he meant it. He was not protecting her because of pity, but because he had chosen her fate as his own. The hunter's lights passed close to the ridge, shadows moving across the snow. The man steadied his breath, his finger hovering near the trigger. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on them both. Inside the cave, trust had been tested, secrets left unspoken. But in the fire of fear and the cold of pursuit, a bond was forged stronger than before. The man whispered, his voice low but fierce. They may come with chains, but I'll meet them with fire. And as the hunters closed in, Leora leaned against the wall, her heart racing. For the first time, she dared to believe he would not betray her. Not tonight, not ever. The cave felt smaller as the hunters closed in. Their lights flickered between the trees, their boots pressing heavy into the snow. Voices carried in the cold air, sharp, commanding. Each word was foreign, but their intent was clear. They were hunting, and they were close. The man crouched at the mouth of the cave, rifle steady. His eyes tracked every moving shadow. His pulse was calm but strong. Years of survival had trained him for moments like this. Yet never had the stakes been so high. Never had another life depended on his aim. Behind him, Leora's small frame shook, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She pressed her hands together, whispering words he did not understand. Her voice was low, melodic, and strange energy seemed to gather around her. For a moment, the air inside the cave shimmered, bending like heat over fire. The man glanced back, startled, but she shook her head. Don't ask, she whispered. Just be ready. Snow crunched loudly outside. The hunters were spreading out, moving up the ridge. They had tracked the prints well. The man knew it was only seconds before one of them found the cave. He tightened his grip on the rifle, his eyes hardening. Then, a beam of light swept across the cave entrance. A metallic voice barked a command. The man didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. Come out. The man raised his rifle slowly. His finger rested on the trigger. His breath slowed. Leora gasped softly. She clutched his sleeve. If you fire, they'll all come. We'll never escape. He looked at her, his eyes steady. If I don't fire, they'll drag you away. Choose how we fight, not if we fight. Before she could answer, a shadow filled the cave entrance. The hunter stepped inside, his armored form towering. His visor glowed faintly, a weapon raised. The man did not hesitate. A single shot rang out. The blast echoed through the frozen fours. As the hunter dropped, his body crashing against the snow. But the silence lasted only a heartbeat. Shouts erupted outside. Boots pounded. Lights swung wildly. The rest were charging up the ridge. The man moved back into cover, reloading quickly. Leora pressed against the stone wall, her small hands glowing brighter now. The air around her seemed alive, trembling with invisible force. She whispered, I can help, but it will cost me. He looked at her, eyes sharp. Then do it. Stay alive. That's all that matters. The first burst of enemy fire tore into the rocks. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted. The cave shook with the thunder of weapons. The man returned fire, each shot precise, controlled. He dropped one, then another, but there were too many. Their armored suits absorbed the worst of the damage. Then it happened, Leora cried out. Her body arched as the glow in her hands spread. Light burst from her palms, bending outward like a shield. Bullets struck the invisible barrier and scattered, deflected into the snow. The hunters hesitated, shouting in confusion. The man stared in shock, but only for a second. He adjusted quickly, firing through the gaps while her shield held. Together, human grit and alien power clashed against the armored hunters. Minutes felt like hours. The air was thick with smoke, fire, and light. Finally, the hunters began to pull back, dragging their wounded. Their shouts grew distant as they retreated into the forest. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of the man's heavy breathing and Leora's trembling sobs. She collapsed against the cave wall, her glow fading. Her body shook violently, drained from the effort. The man rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the ground. His voice was firm but soft. "Stay with me. You did it. You held them back." Her eyes flickered open, faint light still glowing. She whispered, They'll come again stronger. They won't stop." He nodded, his jaw set. "Then neither will we." The fire of battle still burned in his chest. For the first time, the hunters had been forced to retreat. And for the first time, Leora believed they might actually survive. Not because of her powers alone, but because a human refused to let her fall. The cave was filled with silence after the battle. Smoke still lingered in the cold air, and the smell of gunfire mixed with the sharp scent of snow. The man lowered his rifle at last, his arms aching. He turned back toward Leora, who was slumped against the stone wall, her tiny body trembling from exhaustion. Her glowing eyes flickered weakly. She looked as though the light inside her was fading. The man knelt beside her, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "Rest," he whispered, but she shook her head. "No," she said with a broken voice. "You have to leave me. If you stay, you'll die too." The man's jaw tightened. He met her frightened eyes with steady resolve. "I won't leave you. Not now. Not ever." Tears welled in her eyes. She clutched at his sleeve with fragile hands. "You don't understand. They will send more, stronger hunters. They will keep coming until I am gone. I can't let you throw your life away." He placed a firm hand over hers. "Leora, listen to me. You asked me for one night, and I gave you shelter. But I've seen your scars. I've seen your strength. I've fought beside you. You're not just some lost child in the snow. You are worth more than you know, and I will not let them take you." Her lips trembled. Her small voice carried both hope and despair. "Why? Why would you risk so much for me?" He looked at her without hesitation. "Because life should not be bargained. It should be protected, and because I choose to stand with you." She gasped softly, her glowing eyes wide. In her world, choices were never hers. She had been chained, hunted, discarded, but here was a human who had no reason, no reward, yet chose her anyway. It was something she had never known. The man tightened the blanket around her and stood. He looked out at the frozen forest where the hunters had retreated. He knew they would return. He knew the fight was not finished, but he also knew his path was clear. When he turned back, Leora was watching him. Her eyes were wet with tears but steadier now. She whispered, "If you stay with me, they will call you traitor. They will treat you like they treated me." His expression did not change. "Then let them. I would rather be a traitor to them than a betrayer to you." The weight of his words struck her like a blade of fire through the cold. She lowered her head, silent tears falling. For the first time since her escape, she felt safe. Not because she was hidden, but because someone had chosen her fate alongside his own. The fire outside the cave died down. The valley grew still again, yet the silence was heavy. The man could feel it, a storm gathering beyond the trees, not of snow but of pursuit. They would come, more hunters, stronger, relentless. He sat beside her once more, his voice quieter now. "You have a choice too, Leora. You can keep running, or you can stand and fight with me. But whichever you choose, I will not abandon you." Her glowing eyes met his, fragile yet burning with something new, hope, determination, a will she had tried to bury but could not. She whispered, "Then I choose to stay. I choose to fight." The man nodded. A small smile touched his tired face. "Good. Because together, we stand a chance." The night pressed heavy around the cave, but inside, a decision had been made. No longer prey, no longer running. They would face the storm together. For the first time, Leora believed in tomorrow, Not because she was strong enough to survive, but because she was no longer alone. The first light of morning broke over the frozen valley. The storm had passed, leaving the world wrapped in a blanket of white. The forest stood silent, its branches heavy with frost. The cave where they had hidden was quiet now, save for the soft crackle of a small fire the man had built. Leora stirred beneath the blanket. Her glowing eyes fluttered open, weak but calmer than before. She looked at the man who sat by the entrance of the cave, rifle across his lap, his gaze steady on the woods below. He had not slept. His face was tired, yet unbroken. For a long moment she simply watched him. The weight of everything pressed heavy on her chest. The chains of her past, the hunters, the long days of wandering alone. But now, there was something else. Something she had not felt in 25 days of cold survival, safety. The man noticed her stirring. He turned, his voice quiet. "How do you feel?" She nodded faintly. "Alive," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but her eyes carried a faint light of hope. He gave a small smile, one of relief. "Then that's enough." Outside, the valley seemed peaceful, but both of them knew it would not last. The hunters had retreated, but they would return, stronger, more determined. The man had no illusions about the danger, but he also knew something else. Together, they had survived the night. Leora sat up slowly, pulling the blanket tighter. Her small hands trembled. "I never thought anyone would stand for me," she whispered. "I thought my life had no value, not to them, not to anyone." The man leaned closer, his eyes firm. "You are wrong. Your life matters. It mattered the moment you knocked on my door, and it matters now." Her lips parted, her glowing eyes shimmered with tears. She pressed a hand to her chest, as if trying to hold the weight of his words. For so long, she had believed she was nothing more than a burden. And this human had given her more than shelter. He had given her a reason to believe. The sun rose higher, scattering light across the snow. For the first time in weeks, warmth touched the land, faint but real. The man stood and stretched, his rifle slung across his back. He extended a hand toward her. "Come on, it's time we move. We can't stay here." She looked at his hand, then up at his face. Slowly she placed her small hand in his. He pulled her gently to her feet. Her legs were still weak, but his steady grip held her firm. Together they stepped out of the cave. The snow crunched under their boots. The forest stretched before them, vast and endless. Yet for the first time the path did not feel hopeless. As they walked, Leora whispered softly, "One night was all I asked for, but you gave me more. You gave me a future." The man glanced at her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he nodded, his voice steady. "And I'll keep giving you nights, as long as it takes." She smiled faintly through her tears, a fragile but real smile. The weight of her pain was still there, but now it was shared, and that made it lighter. The valley behind them held shadows and danger, but ahead, the horizon glowed with light. A new dawn had come, not just for the frozen land, but for them both, for the tiny alien who had whispered for one night of shelter, and for the human who had chosen to give her every night after.